Hey guys, this is Tia from Nail Dip Studio. Welcome to my channel. Now, I just broke my nail and I thought, let me grab the camera so that I can show you guys how I'm going to repair my nail. Not using a nail form, not using a tip, not sculpting it out, but with using silk wrap. Now, I got this silk wrap from Amazon. It's linked in my Amazon store, and we're going to repair that corner that I literally just chipped off. Now, I don't believe that I've ever done silk or played with silk on my channel before, but this will be a first. But you can see that's a significant break. It's enough to where I would need to either build that back out and or grab a tip in some way or shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some scissors and I'm going to cut across the silk wrap tape. Now, what I like about this particular silk wrap is that it has an adhesive background on the back side. So it has an adhesive backing. And so I'm going to use the back end of my scissors to help take and pull that apart. But before I do any of that, I'm going to go ahead and just grab some alcohol. You know how I like to do. I like to wipe everything down, make sure I have everything off. I've been doing my other nails, and I just want to make sure I don't have any residual product or anything like oils on my hand. And I'm going to wipe that off with a lint-free wipe. And those wipes are also linked in my Amazon store. Now, what I'm doing here is I am measuring. I am literally measuring from side to side, the width of what I need from my silk wrap tape. Once I have the width down, I'm going to sort of eyeball it and basically try to like match the length to the free edge that I have remaining. And I'm basically showing you here. I measure that out on my finger, taking those scissors, I'm going to basically cut that tape in half because I only need like half of it. And instead of just only placing the tape on the corner, I'm going to put it from side to side so it has extra retention. Like I'm trying to make sure that I have that. Notice how I'm using the back end of those scissors, and be careful because if you have pointy scissors like this, just be very, very, very careful with those. But I use the back of those scissors to help remove the tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that tape on the free edge, starting with the right side, and I'm going to shimmy it over to the left side. And what I'm going to do is basically press it flat, press it down. I'm going to make sure I try to fold those corners, and anything that is sort of flaring out or is just too much tape left over, I'm using those scissors to cut it down. You just want to cut off the extra. You want to cut as much of that off as possible before you get into the actual dip manicure. Now that you've trimmed everything up, I'm going to slightly pinch the corners just to help start to mold that tape. It's not going to really form or shape until after you start applying your gel and your dip powder. But I want to, start the process. So I'm just trying to help guide it into the direction that I need it to go into. Okay. Now, I'm going to grab my primer, step number 1. I'm also going to grab my base coat, but I'm not going to grab the base coat from the traditional liquid dip powder set. I'm going to grab the base coat from my gel set. And the reason for that is because I want a little bit more retention with this particular silk. I want to make sure that it's a little harder than the traditional dip powder liquid by itself. So I'm going to go in with the gel, but I'm only using the base coat. Now, again, as you see, I'm molding, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a thin layer of that base coat gel. I'm going to apply a thin layer of that base coat gel down. And then I'm going to apply using that spoon. So I have a little spoon on the side. If you have something else, maybe you have like a little scoop or something like that. You want something where you can actually help either pour or assist the powder with, like scooping it up with the spoon and just sprinkling it over the top. You don't want to insert your finger into the powder just yet. Why? Because that silk is very much so like wet, and it's not structured, and it's very loose, and it's very fragile. It's bendy. So however you put it in there, it's going to pretty much settle and set. And I just like to use a spoon, grab my powder for right now, sprinkle that over top, and then cure my nail for about 30 to 40 seconds. Not a long time, but just a little bit. And then we'll start the process again. Now that that's done, let's start to mold and shape just a little bit. Why? Because I have a little bit of retention, but it's still moldable at this phase. Okay, so I'm just going to grab it and see how just pinching it slightly helps to like direct that silk and sort of gather that silk, because I like a tapered look. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that that look is extremely, it's tapered, so that I don't have to do as much filing. And so that I'm also too not, once I start the filing process, that I'm not over filing and basically breaking into the silk. Okay, because I don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to still use that gel base, and we're applying a thin layer only to the bottom, and we're doing that again because we want to create a nice seal with that silk and that base coat. Notice how I hit those corners. And again, yes, there is a little bit of tension because I set the nail the first time, but it's still moldable, it's still bendable, and I don't want to disturb the integrity of the application that I've already applied. I'm going to put my finger in and cure that for 30 seconds. And again, shaping. As soon as I come out, I go in and I start my pinching process, because this will help to really mold that nail. I don't, silk wrap is almost like aluminum foil in this particular case, meaning however you lay it, that's how it's going to end. However you lay it, that's how it's going to end. So you just want to pinch it. Now, still using that base coat gel, I turn my nail upside down, and guess what? I'm going to apply a thin layer of that base coat underneath. Why? Because I don't want moisture. I don't want water or, oils or anything to sort of get in underneath that silk. I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a thin layer, but like maybe instead of one thin layer, I'm probably applying the equivalent of like 2 thin layers at once. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I put my powder underneath there and I cure for 30 or 40 seconds, and then I tap off the extra. Then I believe I'm going to put it right back under there to cure it just a little bit more, because I want to make sure, because it's underneath, I don't want any uncured gel on my hand. So I'm going to, I believe I did cure it just one more time. I might have cut that out, but I think I did. So again, we're pinching, we're pinching, we're pinching, we're pinching. We want to help form and mold. Now what we're going to do, we're going to grab our nail file. Can you do this with an e-file? Sure, but we're going to grab the nail file. I am using the 100. I think I'm using the 100 because I'm trying to just remove some of that bulk, just a little bit of that bulk. I'm trying to remove that. Let me see. Let me touch. Yeah, I'm using the 100 side just to remove some of that bulk. And I'm being very gentle with the way that I'm filing. I'm not overly aggressive with my filing techniques because, again, this only has about 2 layers, thin layers of gel. So it's not that strong because I didn't want to make it that thick. I want to give it more of a natural nail look so that it complements my hand and doesn't sort of look like, I have this thick chiclet sitting on my thumb. So that's why I'm using that 100 side. And notice that's all I'm doing is filing that bulk off, filing down that free edge, and then I'm done. Now, if you zoom in just a little bit, you can see that some of that silk, some of the gel that I had on because I was filing, it came off. And as a result of that, some of that silk sort of frayed. It's sort of sticking out there. So I'm going to grab some nippers, and all I'm going to do is just cut um, the silk that's out there because I don't want that to impact and add width to the dip manicure process on my thumb. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to remove any of the extra just so that I don't have that and only focus on what's still encapsulated. Now that's all good. Let's check for size. They look like cousins. I'm good with it. Let's proceed. So I am going to grab the shade Solo Trip. This is a beautiful, beautiful coral shade that is the perfect blend between, I would say, like pink and an orange. It is. It just screams summer. It screams backyard cookout, burnt hot dog with a frozen strawberry margarita and some crabs. It's a vibe for me. It's a vibe. And it's available on the website, but it's a whole vibe. What I'm doing, we're going to switch. We're going to go back to our step number 2, but in the traditional liquid dip set. That's the base number 2, step number 2. And now we're going to insert our finger into our powder. We're going to let that sit for about 8 to 10 seconds. We're going to pull it off and we're going to dust it off. Okay. We're going to tap, tap, dust, tap, tap, dust. And if you notice, I still didn't take that powder all the way down the side walls, even though I'm building that out. Again, we don't want bulk. I noticed that there was a little like ripple at the free edge. So that's what you saw me do. You see me tapping that in and shaping that up some. I want to catch it now because I don't want to have to, overfile and file off too much product. I want to just make sure I put it back into place and tap it. The other thing is this. I'm waiting to let that settle just a little bit for a few seconds, not a lot. But I do want to make sure that that powder, that liquid and that powder have an opportunity to bond underneath the powder to the powder and the gel that's underneath there. You get what I'm saying? Like I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to like really like get to know each other. And if I go in too quick with the brush that I have in hand, I could disturb that cording. And I don't want to disturb that because I want to make sure that the liquid, traditional liquid, is adhering to that gel polish. Also, too, remember we put gel underneath to build out that free edge that I had just broken. Dust that off, and we'll proceed forward. Okay. Again, sit, let that nail, because I put something else on this nail. It's not my natural nail. For those of you who know me and have seen my work, you know that I usually go right back to back to back to back to back in between dip layers. But in this particular case, I'm trying to make sure that I'm creating a nice bond and it has time to somewhat cure in the natural air that we have. Because this is the traditional liquid, it's not the gel. Now, if it was the gel, of course, I would have been sticking my finger under the lamp again to allow it to cure. But that's not what we're doing. I prefer when I'm doing silk to utilize gel polish. Yes, you can use your traditional liquid set, but it can be somewhat tricky because what you would then need to do is you would need to dip, put step number 2 on, dip into the clear, do another layer, and then apply your bond. Then wash your hands and come back and then start the process all over again. So it could be a little tricky, but what I'm going to do is just apply my second layer of dip powder, and I'm going to apply a thin layer of the base coat, and you can see that ripple right there on the upper corner. I'm going to just pat that back into place and try to get as many waves that I can out using my finger so that, I don't have all that cleanup on the back end. And again, if you see that your dip nail is a little too wet, it's okay to put it back in that powder and get some more pigment and powder added so that it can sop up that liquid. That's what you want. If it's too wet, it should look extremely dry. It should look like that. It should not look wet. If it looks like it's really still wet, you need some more powder. So go ahead and stick your finger back in. I'm going to allow my finger to sit. Again, you don't see me rushing to like dip it back in. I want to give it some time to get to know each other because we have different layers mixing together. I'm going to apply another layer. And every time you apply a layer of your dip powder using your liquid set, I want you to start slightly behind the last layer. And that gives a gradual uh, ascending takeoff, especially if you want to create a natural curve. So you want to just start slightly behind the last layer until you get back to that cuticle line. Some people like to be really, really close. Some people like to stop just shy of. But however, whatever your preference is, just make sure that your application is as neat as possible and that you give yourself enough room to use your tools to file and to blend. That's all I ask. So I applied my third layer and I'm going to use my dip powder in Solo Trip to submerge my thumb, holding the container at an angle and then tapping off any extra. And again, it's something about that upper left hand corner that I am creating these ripples, but you just want to tap them out, tap, tap, tap. It's okay. You're not going to mess up anything. And again, I felt that that was still a little too wet, but I didn't want to stick my finger back in that particular case because the whole nail wasn't wet. It was just that spot. So what you see me doing now is just taking a little bit of powder, just trying to gather some and then taking that and then tap, 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 tapping that in just so that it helps to absorb some of that liquid that wasn't absorbed when we initially dipped our finger in. We're going to apply one more full color layer. And I do that primarily because I like to have vibrant, bold color through and through, side to side, top to bottom. I like it evenly distributed. And so I also find that based on my activities, I prefer to have about 5.5 layers. That's like my sweet spot with 3 layers of gel. And again, as you can see, I'm actually literally doing my nails after I've done these steps. And you don't see that bulk. It doesn't look like chiclets. It doesn't look like it's so bulky. It's for me, it's the perfect combination. So I urge everyone who is dipping, find the sweet spot, find your dip layer combination that works for you and stick to that. Don't let anybody else tell you anything else. Some people can get away with 2 layers. Some people can get away with 3. Some can get away with 4. I'm closer to 5. I'm at 5.5, 6. That's my sweet spot. I can't get down there in those lower numbers because I am definitely going to shatter and crack my nails. So I got a little flooding around that cuticle area, and I'm going to take a little wood stick and I'm going to go ahead and move that product up so that I have room now to do my filing once it's time for me to file. And I'm not going to disturb it too much, but you see how I'm just helping to like perfect the outline by pushing it back. And then I'm using the opposite end of that stick that's somewhat flat, and I'm going to use the back side to help push it into the other layers that's there, so that way it creates a smoother seal and it'll allow me to get a cleaner line when I start filing. See, that looks a lot better than prior to me getting the stick. So that's one of the things that I wanted to also show you. I'm going to dust everything off and make sure that everything is looking right. Now, off. Well, I was out of frame there. But basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that I have enough layers on and that those layers are, in my opinion, what I want. So if I'm good with that layer and I think that's thick enough, then I won't add another layer. But for me, I want one more layer because I don't think it's enough. Enough. So I'm gonna add my fifth and final layer, or is this my fourth layer? One of the two. Y'all can go back and count. But I'm gonna add this layer of color. This is gonna be the last color layer that I apply. And again, this is my sweet spot. I know what works for me, but plus two, because it's silk, and I feel like if I cracked my own nail like that and it was pretty bad, let me just add a little bit more reinforcement. So that's what I'm doing. And using Solo, I'm going to take that container and tilt it. If you struggle with putting your finger in at an angle, like at a 45-degree angle, take the container, tilt it, and then insert your finger straight on. It gives the same effect, and it will still give you the same it'll give you a better result than just plumping your finger into the powder straight in. You're going to disturb and create all kinds of nasty ripples, and it's not going to be pretty. So just another little tip. Now what I'm going to do is just dust off everything, and I'm going to seal everything. Someone asked me in my comments whether or not I use clear all the time, and I do. The only time I don't use clear, and this is just the one exception, is if I'm using clear as the entire dip manicure. So if I'm starting with clear, I'm going to end with clear. I don't need anything because I'm just doing clear. And sometimes I do that. I may just want to wear my natural nails, or I may want to utilize one of the gel polishes that I have coming out on my hand, and I may only want to do the clear. But anytime I have any dip powder that has pigment in it, I am going to use a clear. Not using the clear can definitely result in you losing pigment, which means that you will have an uneven color distribution on your nail. Some spots may look clear, some spots may look like you have the color. So I always encapsulate that pigment so that it doesn't disturb that. And when I'm filing, I'm not filing off the pigment. I want to keep as much pigment there as possible. Once I do that, I'm going to apply my bond, step number 3. And once I apply my bond, step number 3, and dust everything off and then apply my bond, I'm going to let that settle for a second. But before it settles, because again, just like your traditional dip powdered manicure, you know that until you actually apply that bond, you still can sort of mold that nail. Well, we're still going to mold. We're going to mold and do as much as possible with our silk wrap here. So after I apply that bond, I'm then going to start pinching, and I'm going to start pinching not too aggressively, but I want to be firm because I don't want it to give me a flared look. I want a tapered square short nail, nothing too wide. And so that's why I'm going to go in with my pinching technique. And you only want to when you're pinching, you want to pinch and blow. Pinch and blow. You don't see me on the camera doing that, but I'm literally pinching my nail, and then over top I'm like trying to blow it down so that I can help cure it quicker and mold into position. But notice I'm using my pointer finger, my thumb, and I am pinching that free edge of those side walls and to help create that narrowed look. Now that we've molded everything and it's now shaped like I want it, you're going to be tapping your nails listening for hardness. If you hear that, it's time to work. You can go ahead and grab your nail file and begin the filing and shaping process. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to be shaping and filing the nail. I'm not going to be too aggressive because I don't want to disturb the layers that I've added on. But I am going to make sure that I drew up and I take my time using that 180 side to shape, outline, and then we're going to be molding the top part of the nail just to smooth that out and using the buffer. Now that we have our desired shape, I need to clean up the free edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the corner of my nail file and I'm going to use the 100 side, the coarser side, and I'm going to sort of dig in there a little bit without causing any damage, but I'm going to just use that to rock back and forth, to smooth that out a little bit. If you have an e-file, you can also use your e-file. I'm going to grab my e-file and I'm going to use my ceramic bit, and it's I believe it's the medium coarse barrel, which would probably be more of like an 80 to 90 grit. And I'm going to use that to sand and clean and smooth everything out underneath the free edge. Let's grab our buffer now that we have everything smooth and shaped up, and I'm going to grab the buffer and buff everything out. Once I finish buffing the nail, I'm going to get up, wash my hands, and then I'll be back to apply the gel. Okay, I'm going to grab a lint-free wipe, a little alcohol. I'm going to wipe everything off. I just like to do that one more time. I'm going to grab my lamp, and then I'm going to grab the NDS base coat, and I'm going to apply one layer of base. I'm going to cure that for about 60 seconds, and then I'm going to grab the top coat, which was the glaze, and I'm going to grab it and apply 2 layers and cure each layer for 60 seconds, and then I'll be back to add the moisturizer to my hand. now that we've done that, everything's finished. No one would be able to tell me that that's not a nail tip or a nail form, but we actually extended and repaired that broken nail with silk wrap. So you can definitely use silk and dip powder. Now, I was at Target and I saw these two hand creams and I wanted to just show them to you. On one aspect, you have one that has retinol in it, and then on the other hand, you have a age renewing hand cream, and I think that that's a good cream to have just to put it in your purse and carry along with you so that you're getting that extra moisture that you need for your hands. But again, I just wanted to show you a couple of options. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Until next time, keep dipping. Bye, guys.